Story 1. There is a very bad Dutch movie called En Motorfakker. En Motoren means to keep going for the sake of going without a purpose in sight. The film is about a man in his 30s who lives in his parents' basement and is still studying, which in practice means drinking beer on the couch and playing games all day. He meets someone and everything seems about to change after 40 to 60 minutes, but that person leaves for reasons I cannot remember and he learns nothing. The film ends where it began. It is terrible and by far the worst movie I have ever seen. Story 2. A League of Their Own. There was no way in hell Dottie was dropping that ball. Story 3. Christmas with the Cranks. The titular characters spend most of the runtime being pressured and guilt-tripped by their neighbors because they decide to take a year off from hosting an expensive Christmas party now that they are empty nesters. Then their daughter comes home at the last minute, and the parents have to put on a party after all. The neighbors gloat and call them selfish, insisting they need help getting things ready. The film intends to portray the parents as Scrooges who forgot the holiday spirit, but it comes across as the neighbors being rewarded for bullying by forcing the cranks to restore the Christmas traditions the neighbors want. Story 4. Grease. You have to change yourself on a fundamental level to impress your love interest. Great message. Story 5. The Women, 1939. A long story about fierce, independent women is wasted in the very last seconds of the film when one of the women happily takes back her unfaithful husband for no clear reason. Story 6. My Sister's Keeper. The movie ending was completely different from the book ending. In fact, different characters died. Story 7. Lucy. To be honest, I did not like most of the movie, but I rewatched it recently and the ending was especially irritating. Story 8. Breakfast Club. The bully and the jock got the girl. The geek got the essay. Story 9. The Intern. Forget that film. It really angered me. A young, beautiful, successful entrepreneur takes back her cheating husband and relies on an older man to guide her as she realizes what success means. Story 10. My son went absolutely nuts at the end of Toy Story 4. He is still salty about it. Story 11. The Green Mile. I do not think John Coffey deserved to die. Story 12. 51st Dates. They are on a boat in the middle of the ocean. She is trapped with people she has never met before. They have a child. She was pregnant for 9 months without knowing what happened. All of that seems intensely cruel. Story 13. Pretty in Pink. The original ending had Andy end up with Ducky, not Blaine, and that's how it should have stayed. Story 14. Marley and Me, mostly because they marketed it as a happy-go-lucky movie about raising a chaotic puppy, and the ending devastated me. Story 15. Tusk. I hated the whole movie, especially the end. Just put the bloody thing out of its misery. Story 16. Snowpiercer. We watched the whole story unfold, rooting for the protagonists, only to see humanity go extinct. Yes, that is how the movie ends. It is the end of the human race. Game over. Story 17. 9 Dead. For those who do not know, 9 people are kidnapped by a masked man. He tells them they have a time limit to figure out why they are all connected, or he will kill one of them and repeat the cycle. In the end, 3 people survive and discover the connection. The kidnapper lets them go and agrees to turn himself in to the police. When one survivor decides she has revealed too many secrets that could ruin her career and reputation, she kills everyone and gets away with everything. Story 18. I know it is not a movie, but the Squid Game Season 3 ending upset me so much. I watched all of it just for that disappointing ending, for crying out loud. Story 19. Star Wars. Rise of Skywalker. It was not the end of the world, but it felt incredibly forced. Story 20. This is a 2-part point because the films are related. Wonder Woman has a terrible ending because the whole film follows Diana as she is convinced that some big bad is behind the war, yet much of the film's theme is that humans are capable of great evil and great selflessness. At the end, there is a big reveal that Ares, the god of war, was the antagonist the whole time, and it concludes with a large computer-generated imagery fight that undercuts the earlier thematic ambiguity. In Wonder Woman 1984, the antagonist Maxwell Lord is blessed and cursed by a magical stone that holds the power of a demigod, Dolos, the Duke of Deception, allowing any wish to come true. He does not intend to do evil and aims to use the power to help people. But the power is clearly corrupting. The film would have benefited from the actual demigod being released and forcing Diana into a major computer-generated imagery confrontation to stop him and the people affected by the cursed wishes. Instead, the film ends with Diana asking the world to take back their wishes, and everyone simply does. She also acquires an impressive golden suit of armor that immediately falls apart at the first opportunity, which would have been perfect for a climactic battle. Both films therefore have weak endings that, thematically, might have worked much better if swapped. Story 21. Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. They have never been realistic films, but for goodness sake, aliens? I got up and walked out when the spaceship scene started. Story 22. Thelma and Louise. Why could the female friends not survive in the same way male friends usually do despite the crime? Story 23. Spider-Man. Across the Spider-Verse. The entire theater and I were upset that it was over. We were not ready for it to end. People were swearing in frustration. Story 24. Usual Suspects. That man was lying. His story was not true. What a dishonest man. Story 25. Transformers: Dark of the Moon. Optimus Prime never wanted to kill Megatron. Story 26. Beneath the Planet of the Apes. Oh boy, the apes seem to have the upper hand here. I wonder how our heroes are going to get out of this. Story 27. The Lord of the Rings. Why the fuck did this masterpiece have to end? Story 28. Artificial intelligence did not need the alien part. Story 29. Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes remake sucked. But when the last shot is an ape version of the Lincoln Memorial, fuck you, Tim. Story 30. How to Train Your Dragon 3. The villain tries to exterminate all dragons and wants humans to live without them. They kill the villain, and humans proceed to live without dragons anyway. You people killed a man. Couldn't you have talked it over? Story 31. Atonement. I get it. It's in the title, but it still pisses me off. Story 32. Cars. I know it's the whole point of the movie, but why didn't lightning just finish first instead of breaking and helping the king? Story 33. The movie, The Mist. He should have waited 5 more minutes. Story 34. Half of the otherwise decent horror movies I watch explain nothing about the evil entity that motivates the plot. Art. Story 35. The Horse Whisperer made me stand up and yell during the movie. In the book, he dies after being mauled by a bear. He does not ride off into the sunset, for goodness sake. Story 36. The Mist. They kill everyone in the car seconds before the rescue arrives. It is pure torture porn that was not even in the original story by Stephen King. Stephen King said he wished he had thought of it, which is somehow worse. Story 37. 500 Days of Summer. He should have at least told her she was a bitch. Story 38. Titanic. I can't believe she threw a priceless diamond into the sea. Seriously, I don't think Rose likes or appreciates her granddaughter very much. Story 39. Rent. Explicitly an adaptation of La Boheme. Except in the last minute, love cures the sex worker of AIDS. Beat by beat it matches until, magically, all the friends are around her as she is dying. But she looks into the eyes of her beloved and her fever breaks. She is going to be okay. But the other couple, who are luckier in the opera, become a gay couple in the movie. Instead of the naughty, saucy girl Musetta, it is Angel who dies. So straight Mimi, who dies in the opera, is loved into survival, while Musetta, who survives in the opera as a loyal friend, is transformed into a gay man who is allowed to die. Story 40. U-Boat 571 is quite good, but when it reaches Act 3 it just sort of stops. Story 41. I hate how, in Happiest Season, Abby takes Harper back. She totally should have ditched her and gotten together with Riley. Story 42. Mamma Mia. I wasn't enjoying it to begin with. The only reason I continued was to find out who the father was. But they didn't say. Story 43. Law-Abiding Citizen. I still have to watch it again with the alternate ending. Story 44. Shit, I should have at least done a lot of cocaine or methamphetamine to stay awake for a few days at a time. Extend that out. Story 45. I did not like the intern's ending, to be honest. I understand that couples often reconcile after someone cheats, but it would have been more sobering and powerful if Jules had split from Matt and pursued the entrepreneurial path she wanted. The ending felt stereotypical, like a Hallmark romance. Story 46. The face kick plot conveniences in The Karate Kid. Let them count or not. Just be consistent. Story 47. Too many. A shorter answer would be which movie endings do not annoy me. Story 48. Recency bias, but your monster. As it turns out, the monster who was her support system and lover was imaginary, and she killed her ex-boyfriend who dumped her when he found out she had cancer. Some may see this as a you go, girl ending, but to me it just needlessly ruined the life of the cancer survivor protagonist. She will never see the outside again. She will spend the rest of her life in a jail cell or a psychiatric ward. Story 49. The ending of High Tension renders the rest of the movie pointless. Story 50. There was an indie horror film from a while back that ended with, "To be continued." Story 51. Old Guard 2. Watching that was a waste of my life, and then they gave it that bullshit ending. Theron can just fuck off. Story 52. Inferno 2016 starring Tom Hanks. The ending was the exact opposite of the book and changed the story completely. Story 53. There's a movie called How It Ends from 2018. We said, with a name like that, it has to have a pretty amazing ending. It also stars Forrest Whitaker, who won an Academy Award. What a complete piece of shit movie with the dumbest fucking non-ending I've ever seen. Story 54. La La Land. I understand what it is trying to achieve and what it is going for, but this is a movie built around fairy tale-like whimsical musicals. It abruptly ends with a predictable, unsatisfying conclusion, as if the filmmakers completely lost touch with the film's essence. How could she have no idea? He had opened his own jazz bar until she stumbled upon it? It did not make sense. I could understand them breaking up because of demanding careers, but their lack of contact and his failure to send her a note about his new venture felt out of character. I felt like I was watching a completely different ending. Story 55. The Black Christmas remake from 2019 was so ham-fisted and generally bad. It seriously angered me. Story 56. Mama. The entire movie was suspenseful and had great jump scare moments, but at the end I just felt sad for her. Story 57. I just finished The Dead Don't Die. It felt like they gave up during the last 20 minutes. Story 58. The ending of My Sister's Keeper was changed from the book against the author's wishes, and it completely altered the story's message. Story 59. Wisdom with Emilio Estevez. Great ending, but when I saw it in the theater, it still pissed me off. Story 60. Cujo was the opposite of the book, and I felt so smug going into the movie knowing how it ended. Fucking tatter. Yes, I am 107 years old. Story 61. Dead Presidents. I don't know what it was, probably a reflection of where I was in life, but I just remember feeling the most physically angry I had ever been after a movie. Story 62. Dragon Quest. Your story is a great adaptation of a classic game in the series, featuring some of the best animation since Pixar and a fun high fantasy romp. But the ending essentially rips off the architect scene from The Matrix Reloaded. Story 63. Notting Hill is a complete ripoff of Roman Holiday but lacks that film's excellent ending. Instead, it has a saccharine Hollywood executive's ending. Story 64. I liked Alien Covenant because it felt like I was the only person in the world eager to find out what would happen next, and then the studio pulled the plug on any future sequels. I don't care what anyone says. I like those movies despite how obviously dumb many of the characters are. Story 65. The Last American Virgin is a movie that ends with the protagonist driving away crying. Trust me. Just check it out. Story 66. Cloverfield Lane. It turned from a decent horror movie into a science fiction whatever it was. Laughing out loud. Story 67. Free Guy. Guy and Keys are not the same. Millie did not fall in love with Keys from the beginning, and I did not understand why she ended up with him. Story 68. I saw the movie Wonka. The ending was very bad because Wonka still got to do his thing, but the mean people were still in their houses and the police did nothing until the end credits. I was ready to stop watching because the ending was so bad, and I hated the people who mistreated Noodles and Wonka. Story 69, Savages. In the beginning, Blake Lively alludes to all of them dying at the end, which is how the book goes. They actually play it out that way, and then she's like, "That's how I thought it would go. But actually we all lived happily ever after in paradise." I was infuriated. Story 70, 28 years later, it's as if the ending were directed by Jared and Jerusha Hess, the filmmakers behind Napoleon Dynamite. Story 71, I really want Hannibal Lecter to get what he has coming, but he always gets away with it. Story 72, in Little Women, I loathe that the main character repeatedly turns down the leading male love interest, claiming her independence as the reason she cannot become romantically involved. After the climactic scene in which he confronts her about his feelings and she rejects him, saying they would be miserable together, he leaves the country to grieve through drinking and partying. Later, the main character tells her mother that if he returned and asked her again, she would agree. She then moves across the country to improve her writing. There she meets an educated man who criticizes her work, and she immediately falls for him, with no indication this was due to financial desperation. This undermines the independence she claimed was essential to her character. The film would have been stronger if it had ended with her achieving her dream of running a school for girls without a romantic subplot. Story 73, Sid and Nancy. Sid dancing to disco while Nancy pulls up in a cab. A silly fantasy ending. Story 74. Honestly, the final third of Blade Runner 2049 was terrible. 2 hours of epic science fiction world building came down to a few individuals' daddy issues. So disappointing. Story 75. I recently watched Honey. Don't. That was a choice. Story 76. Marley and Hatchie. I hate sad movies, especially when animals die. I don't mind if people are killed, but not animals. Story 77. The David Lynch version of Dune. Rain on Arrakis. There are not enough facepalms to express how wrong this is. Story 78. The Terminal. So Tom Hanks's character spends a year in the airport. He finally can leave the United States, goes to the bar, gets an autograph, and immediately goes back to the airport. He doesn't even spend one night. That's absolute, cheesy, manipulative bullshit. Spielberg had a lot of bad endings in his movies. Story 79. Thunderbolts. The new Avengers thing absolutely ruined it for me. Story 80. Anything made by Netflix. They have a few good movies, but I swear they all end terribly. I think it is intentional. Story 81. Sucker Punch was the last big film I worked on, and the version, especially the ending I saw before getting let go, was 10 times better. Story 82. Mystic River. That parade scene is maddening. Jimmy literally murdered an innocent man and is accompanied by heroic music while his wife calls him a king for it. Meanwhile, Dave's child is on the float waiting for a father who is never coming home because Jimmy executed him over mere suspicion. Sean simply makes a finger gun gesture and appears indifferent. A strangely unresolved ending. Story 83. Happy Gilmore 2 is a good movie until the overdone golf tournament. Story 84. The Indiana Jones movie that ended up being about aliens, like what the heck. Story 85. In Time. Very well executed. But they did not know what to do with the idea and ended with a strange Bonnie and Clyde-style cliffhanger. Story 86. Are you asking about the story or the overall quality? If regarding the story, then obviously The Mist and The Life of David Gale. If regarding the overall quality, Borderlands, also known as Final Prayer. The movie is amazing, and the last 5 minutes completely ruined it for me. The idea is great, but it is executed very poorly and ruins the immersion. It also creates a plot hole. Story 87. I did not like The Village because the twist felt forced. I know that twists were kind of a staple in M. Night Shyamalan films back then, but this one was completely unnecessary. Story 88. Inferno by Dan Brown. They butchered the ending, which is one of only 2 interesting things about the story. Story 89. Star Wars. The Rise of Skywalker. I cannot begin to tell you how much it damaged the franchise. It wasted much of the potential built up in The Force Awakens and even The Last Jedi. The character development of Finn and Poe went down the drain. The sudden, nonsensical appearance of Palpatine and Rey's climactic moment that mirrored the Iron Man reveal were especially egregious. It was truly a tragedy and made me turn away from the sequel films entirely. Story 90. The musical number at the end of The 40-Year-Old Virgin is such dog's hit. Story 91. Gone with the Wind pissed me the fuck off. Those are 3 hours I will never get back. Story 92. The Natural. The movie's ending is the opposite of the book's ending. Story 93. Artificial intelligence is presented as being able to act only once. Terrible. I never had one atom of empathy for robots. In the Book of Eli, once digital storage existed, the plot became implausible. I Am Legend, yeah, right. Story 94. Most recently, Alien, Romulus. I had forgotten they made this one because I had been waiting for it to reach streaming and never did. The Alien franchise has been weak for so long that it did not feel like a must-see. The start was pretty okay. It felt more like Alien than many recent entries, although the abominable necromancy involving Ian Holm was unnecessary. There is even another synthetic in the movie. That was not needed. It held together until they prepared to fight the attacking xenomorphs from the hive on the ship. I liked that they were adapted to zero gravity since the station had been cycling artificial gravity. They seemed prepared. But the film goes from maybe they do not show an infrared at all in Aliens to an auto-kill, Spider-Man-style suit with an auto-aim gun that tracks them perfectly and kills dozens in seconds, just so the movie can end with a Slenderman-like creature. I get it. Fear is the oldest emotion, and fear of the unknown is the deepest. Xenomorphs are not unknown anymore. Yet this film simply throws in a cheesy, predictable, unrelated hybrid horror monster with no build-up or development. It appears, makes a noise, and dies. It has been a long time since a director made a true alien movie. Now they are generic science fiction monster films dressed up as alien stories, and that is frustrating. They forgot what made the xenomorphs menacing. Being out of our element, relying on tracking tools that fail, expecting human-style fights, ambushes, swarms, and especially the fact that they are far more intelligent than the characters give them credit for, until the few survivors learn better. I watched it because Alien, Earth was coming up, and it really killed the series for me. Watching a xenomorph behave like a raptor from another bad Jurassic Park movie, running full tilt in the open and killing several people instantly off-screen, is not what I wanted. I have also seen so many when is a robot not a robot science fiction films like Blade Runner that I am not interested in that side of the story either. I barely finished episode 3 last week and cannot bring myself to start episode 4. Story 95. Any film by M. Night Shyamalan. One director who cannot end a film. Story 96. The Dark Knight. It needs to be 10 to 20 seconds longer. Follow Batman onto the highway, and then the camera rises into the sky as he disappears into the night. The music needs to swell before the end. I hate that harsh cut. Story 97. Uncut Gems. I was low-key rooting for Howard even though he's a jerk, and I was upset when the movie ended the way it did after all it put me through. Story 98. Fallen is the Denzel Washington movie about a serial killer whose spirit jumps from body to body by touching someone. He lures his victims to an isolated place so that when he dies there is no body for the spirit to transfer into. At one point the spirit jumps into a cat. How did Denzel Washington's character die and then narrate the entire movie? Story 99. Blazing Saddles is a great movie with a nonsensical, unfunny ending. Story 100. Honora. Everyone tries to assign complicated explanations and meanings to it, but I don't think it's that deep. She was a sex worker, performed a sexual act, and returned to her difficult life. It was a sad ending. Story 101. No Country for Old Men. I have dealt with people hyping this movie up for years just to get that shit. Story 102. Stowaway felt like it simply ended because the production ran out of money and could not afford to finish the movie. Story 103. Dear Zachary. Man, I would have jumped through that screen if I could. I was shocked. And I am never surprised by television. Story 104. The Outsiders. I expected Matt Dillon to live with Johnny. Of course, they stuck to the book. I used to know a guy who looked like Matt Dillon, and boy, did all the women love him. He disappeared, probably into Twin Pines or wherever he got lost in the show. Story 105. The Hunchback of Notre Dame. I know it's an old Disney movie. In fact, it's my favorite of all time. The first part of the ending is spectacular, pun intended. But that last bit? What happened to all that molten material? Did it go into the sewage, wreaking havoc? I guess the steps of the church. And the entire grounds around it are undamaged. Did no one see him die? God just snapped his fingers and pop. Everything's back to normal and no one noticed. Laughing out loud. But time to celebrate, you all, that part gets me every time. Good old Disney shenanigans. Story 106. Requiem for a Dream. I might still have post-traumatic stress disorder from that film. What the actual fuck? Story 107. Blade Runner 2. Harrison Ford's character never helped get Ryan Gosling's character any medical attention. So he sat there and died on the stairs outside after driving all night and being gutted like a fish. Story 108. When I rewatch Rat Race, which features Smash Mouth at the end, I turn it off before it gets there. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.